Welcome to Philly Coco Presents Side Project Spotlight, episode 36. This is a developer's journey into making cool stuff. I'm Kotaro.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Aaron.
And we are Philly Coco, a Philadelphia-based Cocoa Heads community focused on Apple development. That primarily, but not exclusively, means iOS, Mac, tvOS, and watchOS development. Philly Coco's true desire is to take you higher on your own developer journey.
Yay.
Yay.
Also, yay. Last time I'm going to have to mention that my voice is finally back.
Congratulations.
It's like 100% back, I think, now. This is great.
And you sound great. You sound great.
I mean,
we almost had
like air quotes, but
we almost had to turn down your gains.
Yeah, I know.
You sound so great.
I was like, am I peaking? I'm just so used to not having a voice that would adjust my audio.
Very cool. Very cool.
It's good. I gotta get my my podcast voice back now.
Yes. So it's been 2 weeks since the last podcast, and we are in the process, just as a status update in general, of making a habit-forming app. Think of it like a glorified to-do list app, but packaged in as a way to build up your habits.
Yeah, well, because it was originally, just to rehash, it was originally the idea is to track really larger long-term goals. And how do you accomplish goals? You have to break things down into kind of small habits and, do them over and over again. And so it kind of evolved into more of a habit tracker. So that's what we're calling it. And the idea is you have a goal, you break it into, you say when you want to work on the goal, and then you track when you work on the goal, and then you can see some stats. So straightforward, except that, of course, because we're us, we made it way more complicated than is necessary, and so it's taking us forever. But progress is being made.
It is a fascinating journey for sure. I think last time we at least had a game plan of sorts of trying to get a test flight build out by end of February. That's debatable, but
it's debatable. We're going to do that because that's like from the perspective of us recording, not when you listening.
Yeah.
Recording, it's like a week, so a little more than a week. So I don't know if that's gonna. We're like, I could see it happening.
I could see us getting
within maybe a little
prototype
later.
done, meaning like a alpha,
like an internal one. Yeah, I don't know about public test flight one yet.
Yeah, so I can see that for sure.
Yeah. So since last time, if I review the notes, we were supposed to do 3 things. I was supposed to do some core data stuff and figure out what we're doing with the model finally, and I did that. Yeah. And Kotaro was supposed to wire up some UI components, which maybe you did, but it wasn't in the branch I was working on. And then Aaron was supposed to be reviewing something. I'm not really sure. Settings. And you said you were doing something, but it was in a different branch. So not everything is integrated. And I also added linter support, so we can talk about all those briefly if you want.
Sure. So I have been slacking, no question about it. So card view does need to get wired up. I have a branch, but I haven't really done too much with it. My goal was to get that card interaction working, but like you said,
which card interaction?
The card, the sort of the swipe left. You swipe left if you didn't do it. You swipe right if you did do it. Kind of like a Tinder style interactions for the iPhone component.
Yeah. So like the thing. So I have messed with your components a little bit, but I don't want to do too much modification because you were already working on them. So this is one of the problems with coordinating this stuff and having like real custom UI components. Yeah, because it's slowing me down because I can't wire up the UI like I could if I just use more standard stuff like you see in every demo of a to-do app. But we do not do things the normal, easy way here. We do things
not at all.
The very difficult way. And what's funny, it's not going to buy us any more users or anything.
No,
if anything, it's going to make it worse because people are going to find bugs. But whatever.
See, here's the most hilarious problem with this. When you do things in Sketch, right, or Figma, whichever design
we use Sketch,
wireframe tool of choice, right, and we use Sketch here because I love Sketch. I
like Sketch. Sketch is awesome.
So the UI components are very custom and they're very custom in the way they interact as well. So like if I do a swipe left to swipe right, then the the logging tool will do something. The logging UI component will do something else and will react to that in one particular view, as an example. And they all have different like cute interactions that will happen during like if like in a save state, in a like a pause state, if you haven't done anything and maybe it thinks, oh, maybe you need a little hint or something, it might do something there. It's stupid. I made it I designed it too hard, too I don't know, what is it like it's like
it's too hardcore,
I don't know.
man.
I don't know what the term is. Like you get too confident in your design. Like you get too crazy with your design skills without really thinking. It's that old Jurassic Park line. You use the could and should line.
You
spend so much time
so focused on figuring out like how to do it. You never thought about whether you should do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's fine. It's because of the side project. It's fine, but it's I want to get it. I still want to get it wrapped up and like the first version. But it's cool though. The interactions are cool.
My double duty job for this next week. You got to put me to the fire doing this. Well, you already do, but like you got to put me to the fire. I got to get those card interactions done for you and for us in general.
I mean, at least a little bit. I mean, nothing has to be perfect. Like I have goals. You can create and update goals. Can't delete them yet, but that's easy enough to add.
Yeah.
But I could do all that stuff, but it's not perfect. Like the screen definitely needs work. Like to have a better like a picker in there and some make it a little cleaner. But it works, and I got that working, and the core data figured out what we're doing with the core data stuff. So that's all working. And then I went to look at the log screen to build that, and that's where I kind of got stymied. And I was like, should I just build it with like standard lists and stuff and just to get moving, or do you have something in mind with this? I wasn't sure. And I was going back to Sketch.
Technically, that was supposed to be there where there was a plus button, and then it'll bring up a modal that you can just manually add logs in there. If I didn't add it, then that's on me. But
no, yeah, but I mean, like I went to go design the screen, and I was going over the sketch, and I was like, what is the screen supposed to look like? And I mean, the goal screen also needs to have an update to have the list of like the day of the week or something stuff. So there's like lots of stuff in there we need to add that is related to
one of the dangers of wireframes in general. I can't even say whether it's a low-fi or high-fi problem, like high fidelity or low fidelity problem. It's a problem regardless. It's like if you don't provide user flows for all of these, developers will have a hard time interpreting. Like especially if you leave anything up for interpretation, that's bad. And I should know this. Like that's the thing. Like I should know this because I am the recipient of these of these types of design, and I'm also a perpetrator of it.
But if we have the log screen working, and I mean, we might have enough to start dog fooding at that point because you just need to record. It doesn't need to be like we don't necessarily need the little UI and the goals screen to tell you what day of the week you're talking about. But maybe I could change the fetch request to do it based upon the day or something like that.
What you can do is just do some generic UI, like a list or something like that, just something to indicate what you've done, and then have like in the code just have like a to-do tag to be like, get rid of this when you actually do your AUI thing. Yeah,
I guess I'll do it because I also added SwiftLint support, which was very easy. Don't be too impressed. It was
every app developer's like, what, you didn't do that already?
No, I added it in. So I don't know if it's the only way of doing it, but
what is SwiftLint?
It's a linter, so it has a bunch of rules in it. It runs and like processes your code and then like warns you about things that violate its so-called rules. And of course you can adjust these rules. We're just using the out of the box set. And the way I have it set up is I used Homebrew to install it on my machine, and I don't know if there's a better way of doing this, but I think I did that, and then I added a little script in a build phase. This is all just from their GitHub page, which runs it. I think I'm running it right after compile or right before, one of those. You can run it right around either before or after the compile step, and there's trade-offs for that, I guess. But I run it, and then it gives you a bunch of warnings for things. And the reason I wanted it was so that I could get warning messages for to-dos. You can also set it up to do errors for to-dos, so you're forced to close them, but we're not going to do that because we have too many of them. but it gives you these warning messages, you know, which is useful. Yeah.
Of course, we have too many to-dos.
Yeah, I mean, well, no. See, I was like, this all started because at the day job I did this because I was working on, I'm fleshing out this UI. A lot of this, I don't have like a whole sketch file for this. I kind of have an idea. I've been like messing around prototyping in SwiftUI. So I was like, okay, I'm putting like all these to-dos in places. Where's a list of these to-dos in Xcode? And as far as I can tell, there isn't really one screen somewhere.
You don't do a search.
That's what I mean. I guess you could do that,
Yeah,
but I mean, there isn't just like one nice little screen. I was like, can I just get it to like give me as warnings or something? And so that's why I discovered SwiftLint. So I installed it and I ran it, and then it also has a lot of rules about white space and line length and stuff. So I went and I fixed all the warnings, and I ran SwiftLint fix against our entire code base to remove a bunch of excess white space that I didn't like, and then I also put in the README that you should turn on some checkboxes in Xcode so that it tries to not add these weird white spaces. I don't understand why it's so obsessed with white spaces. The SwiftLint, it's really obsessed with these white spaces being in there. Maybe that's something to do with multiple people accessing the file and it causing unnecessary, changes or something. I don't know. But it like every other line, it was like a warning about these white spaces. So I thankfully SwiftLint fix worked.
I mean, it's kind of funny because doesn't like VS Code have like an auto, like a way to auto fix those things? So like as you write your code, it will make those adjustments for you.
Possibly, I don't know. There's an Xcode setting which does that, which helps.
Yeah.
That's what I put in the README. It's like if you go to Xcode, you go to settings, text editing, I think. And then editing, and then it says under while editing, automatically trim trailing white space, and there's a sub checkbox which I had to click, which is including white space only lines, and that seems to have greatly reduced the warnings. It's not all. It's not 100%, but it greatly seemed to reduce the amount of those warnings.
One of the things I remember when in one of my previous contracts that it was really it would do things that forced me to at least consider, instead of doing is array.count equals 0, it will say, why don't you just use empty instead? It'll give me that warning. Or
it does a lot of those.
Yeah.
And then
like nice indentions. It'll do if you do the Swift fix, it'll do those indentions that you're too lazy to do.
Yeah, so the thing about this is it runs only when we build. So I don't know if there's a way of making it work while you're coding, while you're in the editor. I think that's how you can get it to work in other editors where it can be or could run on save or something. But it has to, run the whole process. So it's not like it can. It's not like doing it constantly like the built-in Xcode stuff is. But whatever, it works. It's cool. It's making our code slightly cleaner, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, I guess you probably more than me. Like I do have this OCD might not be the right term, but I do have this tendency to be like, man, I just wish I'd just indent this just right and just keep it clean and just keep it. No, too many spaces on these Swift UI things. Got to cut those spaces out.
It's useful when you have multiple people working on something to have some kind of rules about some things like how code should be written. I mean, I don't think it depends on the group and how many people and everything about how anal you need to be about it, but it helps because it makes the whole code base more familiar. And you just want to avoid radically different ways of doing the same thing sometimes. So for our team, it honestly doesn't really matter because there's only a few of us. But, I've never used it before, and it was really easy to set up. So I said, let's do it. And again, the main reason was to get that to-do thing as a warning, which I got to tell you is very useful. Because then I see all these places where we need to work on it. And otherwise, a lot of times those to-dos get lost.
One thing that I found interesting in our warnings is that I know you have set up some like unavailable. I forgot what was that term.
Deprecated?
Deprecated, right?
Yeah, I did deprecated warnings.
Well, I guess maybe we should just refactor those and just get.
Well, I am. I mean, that's why they're there, because I don't even think. I think some of the ones that are there, we're not really using them anyway. Yeah. But there was just code that was. There was still code paths calling into these other classes we're not using. So I didn't delete them yet because then it just required more changes and more changes. You know what I mean? So we'll get to them. That's why I made them deprecated, so that I know that they're still there. So that's like that's a pro tip, guys. A pro tip. to like giving yourself little reminders.
Yes.
I love deprecating stuff. It's you know,
there's
fun.
that I know my old I think it was Carl that shout to you, Carl. You know who you are. You're listening. He used to always have that Apocalypse Now line. It's like, I love napalm in the morning, but in his case, he would just, I love deleting code in the morning or something like that.
Yeah.
He would just be like, oh man, that feels so good when you could just take a chunk of code and just be like, and then done. That's great.
And it doesn't give you a million errors.
What's that?
When you do that and it doesn't give you a million errors.
Yes,
yeah.
that's
well,
also
that's
true.
what I mean. Like I was refactoring. I would try to delete things, and then it would give me a bunch of errors because there's like all these references. So that's why I started adding. I said I'll just make it deprecated so I can get to it piecemeal.
I mean, it goes back to like this. I don't know why, but so many programmers keeps code commented out, even though we live in the time of like source control. And well, I mean, I'm guilty of this too, but
yeah, I do that. I've done that.
But they don't leave like any indicator of like why it's still there. So it's like, just remove it. That's why we have source control. You can bring it back if you want to.
Do you know who doesn't? You know who doesn't do this commenting out code thing? Aaron. That's my segue to Aaron's update. Because you've been doing stuff that is in some separate branch, right?
Yeah, I was just messing around with the review screen, trying to get some data wired into it, but running into some things of how we're going to handle all the different relations. There's like sprints, and then there's logs, and how the logs relate to sprints, and all that stuff.
Are you updating the model?
I just adding some little things so you can extract the relations because they come back as a set, just like an NS set with no type. So you have to like cast that into a array of the correct type so you can actually access it. I didn't update the like core data model, just like the model objects, so I can get those things out.
Dealing with those relationships, it can be an issue because, as you said, they come back as like sets, but you don't always want that. But then if you break them out, then you can lose like the bindability, right, of them. Yeah. So it's like core data, man. Again, it's like it doesn't 100% work in SwiftUI world. It's like it works, but it's like it's old school, NS object, NS managed object.
Viewing. If you wanted to edit them, you would have to like fetch the original thing.
Yeah. So I guess that's always kind of annoying, but
I guess it's kind of interesting. Like now that we've had that core data SwiftUI relationship for at least 4 years, maybe more. And they do the best they can with like trying to create like property wrappers and stuff to communicate to work with core data, which is great. But then the challenge is once you get the core data objects, how do you like work with them like in a reasonably easy way, in a SwiftUI way, I guess.
Yeah, I think a lot of it might be in the models. You have functions, something that makes another query to get you the data back you need, so that because I'm not sure, like if you instead of just going straight for the relationship because it's not in the right format, and instead of taking it and then creating it and putting it into like an array or something and then breaking that connection, you might want to just do another query that gives you back like a model you can then bind to. Like you can do a query for the thing that's on the relationship instead of calling the relationship property itself. And because otherwise, I feel like you really want to not break that connection. You really want you want things to work, the SwiftUI way. You don't want to just have like an array of stuff. Sometimes you do, but if you're going to be doing updates on it or something, or if you want it to be able to change in reference to something else happening, like you have a screen, you bring up a mode when you add a goal, and then your other screen was like listing goals from an array that you created, then it's not going to update, for instance. So it's like you gotta, stuff like that. So core data is a pain in the ass. What it is, it's a little bit of a pain in the ass with SwiftUI. Sure. But Aaron is working through it. So you have a branch. Do you have a PR coming up? You want to?
We have to work out some more model stuff, especially around like how we want reviews to work with sprints and then like the totals of logs in the sprints.
Well, go for it. I mean, like,
Yeah.
change whatever you want.
Just whether we're gonna like also tag a sprint to a log, or
Oh, yeah,
a
so
log
I was-
to a sprint.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and like the tagging. Can we just drop that for now? Is that really like absolutely necessary for the first?
Sure,
'Cause
we could drop it for. I like honestly like if tagging is adding the complexity, then yeah, just drop it for now.
I mean, yeah, for like the just to get the first like test flight build out,
Yeah.
because I did think about that, and I was like, oh man, this is like tagging makes things way more complicated because of the multiple dimensions of it. You know, you can have like, so why don't we just drop that for the moment and focus more on the core stuff, which is like you have a goal and you log the goal, and you want to have a you want to have some data about over time how you've worked on the goals, and
So we're just not going to use the sprint stuff for now, or we're going to.
no, I mean we could use sprints aren't the same thing as the tags were they?
Right. I just mean
Yeah.
like right now there's no association of which
Oh, yeah,
sprint you were in when you when you made a log.
Right. I think it's
Whether you're just going to like query the date range or something and like do some custom calculation. Oh, was this log in this date range?
Good question. Good
Yeah.
question. We have to decide whether
Yeah.
is a sprint a mandatory relationship or is it not. I think originally it wasn't, but then maybe it became one. I don't know. What do you think? Should we decide right now?
We could think about it a little bit longer because
I think we can.
complexity.
This would probably be a longer conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm of the opinion that if we can drop stuff for
Mm-hmm.
the first test flight build, let's drop it if it's not absolutely necessary to get something that's useful,
Mhm.
and then bring it back in like the next sprint or something.
Okay.
But let's talk about it off the pod.
Yes.
So we did make progress, and like we actually have an app that's like, you know, we have parts of it that are working and a lot of things that are in flux as usual. And I think this next week we'll have a lot of stuff come together. So you're going to work on Kotro, more UI stuff.
Yep.
I don't know. I guess I can work on the log screen. That's what I was moving towards. Aaron's doing reviews and a lot of relationship thoughts about the core data model. So I'll let you do that. And let's just keep in communication in the Slack and the GitHub. I put notes and stuff in the GitHub issues. I don't know if anybody reads them. But
Oh, interesting. I don't know why. I don't think I get any
I don't-
updates on those notes, which is
I
probably
don't-
good.
I don't get alerts on anything. I don't know how I have my thing set up. I'm like, I got to kind of fix it. I get no alerts.
Oh, we're so newbie.
GitHub. Anyway, and then we'll just keep plugging away because I'm thinking we might our test flight might be an internal test flight by the end of the month. Maybe not a public one, but public one soon. Hopefully soon after that. Just something basic.
Yep.
That works. Doesn't have to be great.
Yep.
The whole point is just to get it out
Just to
there.
get there and to test it.
And which means we have to set up an app record soon.
Yes.
And do we need privacy policy and stuff for a test flight?
Yeah, I can actually whip one up like
We'll just
a
whip
standard
something up.
template.
Yeah,
like a
it
standard
doesn't really
template
matter
one.
what it is for that.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
You're not
So
going to ask ChatGPT to do that for you.
yes,
You're not
that's-
wrong.
it's
Great
called a-
segue, by the way.
Yeah, so the main topic for the rest of the podcast, I think, is going to be is AI, has AI come for our programmer jobs?
Yes.
So, there's been a lot of talk about AI, and specifically the GPT-3 model-based stuff, ChatGPT,
Mhm.
Bing. I don't know what model GitHub uses. They use some OpenAI model. I don't know about which one it is, but they use it for their CoPilot. So there's a lot of these like large language model, so-called AIs. I hate the word AI for these things, but that's what
Get
they
on
call
that
them.
soapbox. This is soapbox
Yeah,
time.
I know. The dog in the background.
Sorry, is that happening?
Yeah, but yeah. So this stuff is all out now. So we thought let's talk about this a little bit because we are all mostly ignorant about this stuff. So I'm sure we'll have very strong opinions about it.
I guess it's sorry if you hear a dog in the background. Somebody has recently left a dog in their back balcony for some stupid reason. Anyhow,
He's not happy about it.
he's not happy about it, so I don't know. Anyway, I guess from our point of view, it's really more of a question of like, okay, AI is a hot topic in 23, and it's now the new crypto. In that sense.
Yeah, that's so
I'm sure
mean.
the dog's
It's
not
kind of
happy
mean
about
though
it.
to say that too.
Well, I mean that's the thing. Like,
Yeah.
in terms of hype,
It's
just
the new
in
hype
terms
thing,
of hype, it's
Not
really
in the like let's make a scam sense, but in the sense of like, oh, let's put blockchain on everything. So it's like, oh, let's put ChatGPT or generative algorithms on everything, whether it makes sense or not.
right. I mean, I get the whole like it's interesting as an experiment. There's a lot of like I see a lot on Twitter in terms of like some ideas of like putting stable diffusion inside of an iPad app, which takes advantage of the M2 processor. You can do a lot of testing of different generative. You can test out stable diffusion in an iPad app or an iPhone even, which is in itself pretty cool, right? Just from a hey tech demo point of view, like that's interesting, right? To be able to generate these images that normally processor takes up like can take up like a minute, in this case with on the iPad maybe it'll take no more than like 15-30 seconds to produce one image, which is pretty cool. Or like I know there was another one where they actually were able to integrate with ChatGPT's API to do that chat inside an iPhone.
I saw that link to the. I looked at the source code in the app before this podcast started. It's very simple. It uses some library that you can bring in as a Swift module.
Oh, really? Oh, interesting. So like an SPM.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's an SPM thing, and then there's some client to the ChatGPT.
Yeah. So I mean, so like getting back to that whole point about like kind of like there are these tools.
Does AI come for our gerbs?
Yeah, sure. But the funny part about the gerbs or the
that's a South Park reference, people. If you don't get the gerbs,
but just I mean, there's always going to be technology that's going to take some jobs or gerbs, whatever you want to call it, but then they get replaced with new ones, and
yeah. I mean, yeah. So the thing about all the AI stuff, there's so much hype around this stuff, and there's so much misunderstanding about it from not just the general public but also like the reporters who are reporting on this stuff, and then there's obviously a lot of big companies that are pushing this stuff. So you got to you got to like be careful when there's a new hype cycle. Got to ask yourself more about, I think, who is behind it, not at least as much as you think about the technology itself, because technology, any particular technology, doesn't have to inevitably exist. Like we have this impression, this view, and I think I got this from reading like I think Joseph Weizenbaum talks about this too in the past. Like there is like the sense that there's an inevitability to technology is itself like a kind of philosophical position, and it's not true. Like we don't have to do everything that's possible to be done. Like what's that line from South Park? We're from Jurassic Park we were talking about earlier. It was like you spend so much time wondering like how to do it. You didn't think about whether you should.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit of that in here, I think, too. Sometimes where it's like, hey guys, do you want to be having programs that work this particular way? But and the people pushing it have a great incentive to push these things.
I think these tools are great. Like if we were just talking strictly Stable Diffusion and ChatGPT, either of those tools, I never view them as much more of a final product in terms of like what you produce, right? It's really something that is really useful as a conversation starter. So maybe, for example, you don't know how to create a Dungeons and Dragons character. You might want to consider using ChatGPT to just create one, just a generic one, just to get a sense of like how that might feel, and then you add your tweaks and massages to your design, right? Same with generative art. I don't think any of the art that gets produced from these, especially if you pick the default models, right? If you have to find a good model first of all to fit a style that you want, and then second of all, you have to understand what type of prompt you want to actually what is the prompt that you can use, the right type of prompt, right, to write the text entry to like say, okay, this this will be exactly what I'm looking for, right? You won't find it. You have to spend at least, hours doing what you would do with your bare hands.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of what I mean. Like, you have to understand this stuff is kind of like black boxy. A lot of it, like, even the creators of the products don't actually understand how a lot of it works inside. Like, literally, like, you understand in principle, it's not super complicated actually, but like, you don't actually understand why the training of the models led to particular patterns, and so you can't trace back the outputs to like where, like how you can't figure out the logic behind how it got there a lot of times, right? So the whole thing is kind of this mysterious, and there's a little bit of art to it, and there's a lot of what's called lore in AI development. There's a lot of like just tricks and techniques, and like from what kind of like neural network you kind of architecture you choose, to like how you do training, and there's a lot of things that are just kind of figured out through trial and error over the years, and they're just published, and then people use them, and they're like, I don't know why this works. It just does. It's weird. It's a weird kind of area to be moving into, because we're very used to, absolutely theoretically anyway, understanding everything that's happening in our program. Like, we can trace it, can see every single step made. It's all very deterministic and linear, and this is also deterministic, but it's much more obscured from our ability to like interrogate. And so you can end up with what we've been seeing in the press now, where people like reporters are using the software and not understanding what it is, I think, or like just falling victim to the Eliza effect too much at the same time, and they end up with like weird output that is not helpful, and then that's being sensationalized. But besides the fact that it's sensationalized for headlines, it's like these tools are going to be, at least now, they're kind of hard to use, right? Because as you said, like, you're trying to figure out the prompt and everything. That's because there isn't a way of knowing what is going to get the output you want from it, because it's all statistical model. It's all giant statistical model trying to make token predictions. So it's hard to figure out like what you want to tell it to do.
I almost find it like if you're just bored and you're looking for a cheap parlor trick, right? Or
right now, that's what I think
trick,
they are mostly.
Right? Basically, right? But if you're trying to get real work done, right? It's like, okay, like like in terms of like, okay, write me a Swift UI, you can tell ChatGPT or CoPilot, right? Write me a Swift UI, an ideal Swift UI core data stack, or write me a unit test for this bit of code, right? That would be great.
Yeah, I don't know about the unit, if it could do a unit test, but yeah, I mean, but that kind of that leads into the tools we have now that are currently available are mostly just useless. I mean, honestly, not completely useless, but like the problem with them is the ChatGPT one specifically. I want to talk about it in general terms, but it's kind of hard to talk about it in general terms because it's not really fair. I guess some of them are more useful than others. So like the ChatGPT stuff is not super useful for a lot of things because it's inaccurate. That, I think, is actually part of the nature of the technology. I'm not sure they can actually get around that as much as they hope, but we'll see.
But that's the thing, right? Like let's take, for example, simple arithmetic, right? Of like if you were to give it like 1 + 1, of course it will figure out, it'll give you back 2. But if you were to ask it something even as simple as 24 times 37, right? It's just it may get it right, but I bet you 9 out of 10 times they'll get it wrong, or it'll be different.
Because it's a token predictor, so it has like, so I don't know if people listening understand how this works. Maybe they do. It's trying to oversimplify it. It's like a giant statistical model. Like when you feed it in your prompt, then it wants to continue that text in a logical way based upon its what is in the model from all the training and the feedback. So it's like kind of saying, if I got these tokens, what is the most statistically likely next token? But it doesn't actually pick the most statistically likely, because then that leads to other problems, and we don't quite understand why it works that way. But that there's like a range of possible outputs, and it picks one, and then it keeps doing it, and then there's some more complicated stuff in there. But it's basically a one-way thing. It doesn't have traditional computing loops and feedbacks and stuff, it's one thing. And so it doesn't actually compute, it doesn't actually do the math. It's just kind of, it just knows that people printed like 1 + 1 = 2 a whole lot, so it knows that's likely to come out. Now you can, there's work being done, and maybe this is how Microsoft's doing. I was trying to figure out how Microsoft's Bing is set up, because I think they're trying to hook it into like their actual web search and stuff and integrate that. So it is possible that you can, and there's research on this, how to take one of these LLM models and hook it into tools that do more traditional computing. And so then that could make it much more useful. And again, maybe this is more common than I'm aware. I've only recently really started looking into this stuff in detail.
I mean, it would have to know when to hand off something to something that's more appropriate, like a calculator, versus like, oh, I need to inspect the entire internet's model and then go, okay, this is the likely outcome, right?
And it's not easy. It's not easy, I think, to program that stuff, because it's not like a traditional programming. It's not how it works. The reason this stuff is kind of everywhere right now is because the GPT 2 and 3, those models, like, it is extremely expensive to make them. And so once they're made, like they could be used by a lot of different people, and they're obviously trying to like get their money back, I guess, from it. But it's really expensive to use. So that's why everybody's using like basically variations on the same model. Because like the amount of data and the amount of expense involved in training this stuff, and in GPT-3's case, the type of human feedback that they did in order, they train the model, and then they use some human feedback, train like a reward model, and they use that to train the other model. Like they did this whole back and forth thing in order to get better, to kind of align it with better answers. And it's very cool, and there's like papers about it. But it's very expensive, obviously. It's like a lot of it's human intensive.
I guess the way I looked at it, it's like it's a trust issue more than anything else. Where once you know that the chat is lying or can't figure out a simple arithmetic thing, the magic trick is gone or is broken, right? The spell is broken, if you will.
Yeah, you can't trust the output of these LMs, right? You can't.
And so you end up doing your own research that you should have done anyway. So like, let's say, for example, going back to that calculation thing, it's like, okay, was that actually true? And so you basically do the work that ChatGPT was supposed to do in the first place. So I mean that's a bare bone example, but like there are much better examples. So
people are trying to figure out uses of this technology, because what's cool about it is, and what's impressive is that, especially the ChatGPT thing, is that you're getting plausible sounding, grammatically correctish, pretty grammatically correct English words coming out of this thing, and like in different ways. And it's the magic trick is very impressive in that respect. But what like utility is there in that? So Bing, or Microsoft, is trying to put this in the Bing, and I'm like, do we need this in a search engine? I don't know. I mean, maybe I haven't got to use it. I've only seen stories about it, but I'm like, search engines have been for a long time giving you more than just web results. They give you like little cards. They do the calculation for you. They look up something, and then they just put it up there as an answer. But I was thinking, how often do I want a conversational style text reply to some search? Usually what I want is a representation of my answer in a much more efficient way, like a table or a graphic or a one sentence, like in a card. Like I'm trying to rack my brain. Like, how often do I want a search engine request to be done, to be like returned to me like I'm having a chat conversation? And I don't know what are the, like, when do you want that? Like, maybe I'm just not like imaginative enough, and once I use the Bing search, I'll be able to figure it out. Use cases.
If the use case is much more in the way, like it would actually be fine if it came back with the same, like if it was a conversational thing where you can continue to add context, right?
Which you can right now. I mean, that's
in
terms of like
to a point until it gets confused.
Yeah, and apparently Microsoft is cutting it off earlier now. I heard. I think they
as long as you don't ask it existential questions in the conversation. But like, let's say, for example, like you want to do a recipe. You're looking for a recipe, right? And you say, hey, can you give me a recipe for a sourdough bread done in like the I don't know, the Italian style, whatever. I don't know, but just sort of like some specific. There's some extra context in there, and maybe something that can be done just with a easy bake oven or something, like very specific, like weird thing. Maybe it can give you like several options, or at least here's the most popular idea, or here's a context that maybe it might work for you.
I guess that's the idea of it. You can maybe, I mean, see, I haven't really seen it be accurate enough for this to be useful yet, but I guess the idea might be that you can get certain kinds of answers kind of translated into a more efficient, like textual form. A recipe might be a good example, but you can already do that without the really expensive.
Well, the thing is, like
GPT tools.
The point about this, in many ways, is sort of like adding a follow-up question and a follow-up question, like you would in a normal conversation, right? It's like, well, can you do it in like something that will save me time? Like, I don't want to have to do all the work. How can I do it so I don't have to like knit constantly or something like that, right? Like the other thing that I worry about with the way it's being implemented nowadays is like, okay, well, they're going to have to put a disclaimer somewhere, which I don't think they do unless it's like a fine print thing where it's like, okay, like if this recipe ends up killing you because you put too much salt or something, right? Like, well, I mean, it just gets the salt amount wrong, right?
Yeah,
unless you go, hey, that's a little weird. Why is it asking me to put 1,000 tablespoons of salt?
Yeah, the output for something like a search engine, I think they really need to figure out how to put more like some traceability in there, so where it's coming from.
I think they do. The Bing one.
They're trying to do that, yeah. I mean, that is a thing. They're integrating like links into it, and it's pretty neat. Yeah. I don't know how. See, I'm really curious how the Bing modifications are working. Like, where in the tech stack are they integrating this stuff? I'm not sure. I haven't seen any like white paper or explanation about what they're doing differently than regular ChatGPT. Have you?
No, I haven't.
No, because they obviously are like, I think, integrating the web results, and are they feeding it back in? I don't know, but
probably.
It's
most just based on the things I've seen. It's like they got to be feeding the results back into ChatGPT and saying, make me a summary of this or something. So that's their secret. So I'm sure they're not.
So basically, the prompt is the search results in some format, and then well, maybe I don't know. We're just guessing here how it works.
Search query plus the search results, and I don't know how deep it's going into the text of the results.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's what it's doing, and that is potentially very useful because then you get the links to the sources, and then you can kind of verify whether the 1,000 teaspoons of salt makes sense or not.
I guess the question is how many of the results is it feeding back in?
Yeah,
is it just giving you the top like 3 results or something? How does it filter out all the 100,000 pages you get back?
I mean, I had joked like if this version, which I guess I should test, of ChatGPT or any of these new.
I would love to test it, but it's always at capacity when I try.
Yeah, I think one of the things I joked about with you guys was like, it'd be great if it wrote my tests.
Yeah, actually, that's a great thing. I thought, why shouldn't it be able to write your tests? Maybe not ChatGPT, maybe something more specifically, maybe something like CoPilot. Maybe CoPilot can, for all I know. I haven't been able to use that either. But so the CoPilot tool, I feel like, is for us an example of a tool that is using the same technology that is already potentially very useful because it's trained specifically on code. Now, as far as I understand, the GPT-3, ChatGPT-3 is actually, I think, foundationally based on a model that was trained on source code. I think I read that somewhere. Could be wrong, but the CoPilot though, however they have this set up, I've seen the demos of it. Seems like actually useful right now if you are using the code bases it's trained on.
I just want to give it my crappy class that I wrote, and I say, write me a test around this class.
Well, I don't know. That's kind of vague though, because what does that mean?
See, that's the thing, right? Like, again, it gets to my laziness about tests. Like, I get like Azam. Shout out to you.
Yes, Azam Sharp.
He sent us a nice testing with confidence blog post.
I have to read that.
I think testing's about confidence. I think that was the title. Let me check now. Testing is about confidence, right? So confidence in and it's a nice short article, really easy read, but it's in a sense it goes back to like trust, right? So like of like of like if you don't have that much trust in the bit of code, maybe it's good to have some tests wrapped around it in that regard. But like, I was like, yeah, but I don't want to have to do that work. So the lazy side of me is like, I know they're right, and I know it's the right thing to do, but damn it,
I feel like the what this is where I think it
do that work for me.
Yeah, well, when I thought when you said about the unit test, I thought something like I'm in my editor and I want to write a unit test, and I give it some prompt related to my class, and then it just builds scaffolding. That is the most annoying part about unit tests.
Sure.
But it doesn't choose what to test. So you just could tell it what to you could say, I want to test this. And because you know what the input and the output is, because it's a function or it's a class or something, that then you, as long as you tell it what it is, it should be able to figure out, what to output there. And I think it would be a combination of like the LLM style stuff and also more traditional, programming of the system, because it could interrogate your code like we already have to a degree built into our tools now.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things you had said something in the base concept of like you're testing behavior, right? So like if I could provide a prompt that says I want to test this particular behavior using this class.
There's a good example of maybe the LLM tools can be helpful because if you can get them to be trained right, so that when you're asking for something like that behavior, it can end up outputting outputting a test that is relatively useful to you. Yeah, see, I think these tools would be great. The reason you want to have this kind of a tool is because you want to be able to provide questions like that are not they don't have to be written like you're talking to a computer. And they could be a little bit more vague because the system itself kind of has this vagueness to it, where it's a neural network, so it's a more flexible in finding output for your input than a traditionally written piece of software would be, which would have to have already identified basically all the paths it could take ahead of time. So the thing is, it's still like a deterministic program. It's just that the programmers don't know what all the paths are.
Right.
And so that could be a great example. Like, oh, can you write me a unit test for this? And that's what I'm telling you. Why CoPilot looks cool. I didn't see a lot of demos. I saw the main demo I saw was from their keynote from a few months ago, and I think Mike Zornick had mentioned something about this, about seeing stuff in the keynote at one of our meetings recently. So then I watched it, and man, the CoPilot stuff was pretty cool. It took into account context. You put in comments, and you could write little snippets, and it would just like generate the little function for you. And I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. This is useful.
It'd be great if I could just dump a whole project.
Yeah,
or just go in there and be like take my project, write all and now dynamically create all the tests, right? So like every time
you really don't want to write tests. You're just I thought you were saying like build my whole app for me. No, you just want the tests.
No, because I want to do that work. Like I want to do. The creative, the business creative,
the business logic stuff like that.
And I want to and I've done this long enough to I can appreciate good architecture, good and I like to like create that kind of stuff. It's actually kind of fun to like reduce and refactor and clean up and make something nice. And then but then I have to go back and be like, okay, when I'm writing some tests, sometimes it's in many ways, it's great form to be like, okay, sometimes these tests are revealing something about the way you've architected your app. So go back and fix the app to make it the test, run, pass because, something's wrong the way you wrote it. That makes sense. Problem is like, I feel like on some level, we get to a point where sometimes we're code in service of the test versus the reverse, and that's kind of annoying to me.
I mean, you're so obsessed with automating away your testing.
It's become my new web view soapbox.
No, but
I know. And I know I'm wrong. That's the funny part.
You're not wrong.
I'm the wrong end of this conversation.
I don't think you're wrong. I mean, I think that if you can automate away the parts of writing a test suite that are just busy work, That's exactly what you want to do. I don't know if you're gonna. At least not anytime soon. You can't get the tool to decide for you what to test. But if you direct it, maybe it can write the tests for you based on a prompt. Like I think that's possible. Look, you can already write other kind of stuff with a prompt.
It's like the SwiftLint, right? When you do SwiftLint fix, right, as a command, I would like something like that where it's like Xcode unit test write, just like, and or even to some extent, it's like, and then base a parameter on that, and just use the machine learning tools on the back end to be like, hey, okay, we're going to write certain tests that are based on what the code you wrote, and of course, I'm sure there are false positives, but the point is that I'm trying to say, okay, I'm like, it'd be great if we could do that.
I don't think you can let it write all of your tests for you because, like, the whole point of writing the tests is that you're verifying, you're like validating your actual code, but then you're going to have some other program write all of your tests without you.
I'm not saying I'm not saying like I have a exact implementation idea, but as a concept.
Yeah, but the thing is, a lot of testing, especially like unit testing stuff, it is a very much a pattern. You're doing the same kind of technique over and over again, the same kind of format over and over again, and depending on how you write your code, if you could just tell it this function, for instance, I want to test the behavior of this function, and then you could determine if you wrote your function clearly, the behavior is understandable from the function signature. So it should be able to generate that, like, potentially, right? I don't know exactly whether it's just an LLM thing or a combination of others. I don't know. But you should be able to generate that. I mean, it makes sense. And the great part would be able to just write that. Now, as I'm telling you, that's how CoPilot kind of works for things. I don't know if it works for tests, but I saw the demo and I was like, that was very cool, where I want this snippet of code that does this. And it just like, I'll put something at least you can get started with.
Sure.
And if you can automate away the drudgery of writing tests, then maybe you would write more tests, and then your code might be better for it, because depending on what test you write, because but the choice of what test to do is still going to be a human choice, because you're the only one who's going to fully understand.
To be honest, I'm not actually. I do enjoy, in a weird way, I do enjoy writing tests. As bizarre as that sounds, after all this like soapboxing, but I don't enjoy the maintenance of them because they lock you in, right? The whole point is to lock you in that sense of like, okay, like this is the business.
What
logic.
Maintenance do you have to do on your tests?
It happens all the time. I can't describe it in any real detail, but it's just one of those like this breaks or that breaks. Like tests. I know. I mean, okay. I don't know what you mean by maintenance, because if your test suite is exercising like business logic behavior or something, right? And you change the business logic so it breaks the test, that's what's supposed to happen. But if the test itself breaks, but not the logic it's testing, then that's a problem with how you constructed the test. So like, what is breaking? That is because it's supposed to break if you change the logic. Yeah. 100%. I get.
Because it's a regression.
I get the point of it. I think it's challenging in the mobile space because everything changes so dramatically.
Again, it's not. You're not supposed to be changing like the thing that's under test. Shouldn't get affected by like regular refactoring and stuff.
If you properly architected your app.
Yes, that's what I mean. I mean, unless you're talking about like if you change the method signature of the thing on the test.
Where I'm basically getting at is I'm a sloppy coder.
Oh, okay. Now I understand. Yeah. I mean,
and I revel in my sloppiness.
Well, this is where TDD comes in. You see, because if you're using TDD according to the proponents, and I used to do a TDD in Perl, you're designing the API as you're like with the testing hand in hand. So you end up like by the time you have your test working, you have the API the way you like it. So maybe you'll be less likely to be refactoring it and then causing the test to break. So I don't know.
Sure.
But testing it has as many books about it. It's its own complicated field. But it is important to test things. But to what degree, what to test, when, how to implement those tests. I mean, that's why there's books about it.
Sure.
And blog posts by Azam.
Yes.
And but you know what we didn't even have time to talk about is we're talking about can it generate tests for us. can these tools generate entire apps? So I'm sure that's what some people are worried about, because we've had for many years, and we're not going to go down this rabbit hole because we're like running out of time, but we have for many years had websites you could go to and get like a whitelisted app. And I was thinking to myself, like, there's a lot of these, like, if there's a lot of this code floating around out there, couldn't the model get trained on it or have been trained on it? So maybe you could actually generate basic types of apps, like demo apps that you can just fill in the blank and then poof, here's a very basic app to start with.
As weird as it sounds, even if you could, right? You will always have this really nagging feeling like, oh, I want to change this, or I want to do that.
I agree. I think I'm just saying as a starting point, right now you could generate like functions
sure,
and stuff, right? I think, and they could be really useful, but they're always, it's like starting points. You're always probably going to modify them. They might be wrong in some way, but I haven't seen an example of like, give me an entire app. I don't know if that's a thing that can work yet, because that's way more complicated. There's lots of files involved and stuff like that. But I mean, you have tools to generate scaffolding. You have tools that generate these whitelisted apps, and they don't work with this kind of these LLM tools. But if I could be like, give me, I need a simple app that connects to this API and lets me and gives me like these kinds of basic views and stuff. Can we right now do that? I don't know. Maybe someone listening knows whether that's possible. And if we can't, I do feel like that is like something that will be at least tried for, because why not? And that doesn't mean you're out of a job. It just means you can save yourself a lot of time.
I'm almost surprised to a certain degree. I would expect probably within a few years, we should expect something like Figma or Sketch or one of those types of design tools to be able to generate SwiftUI code. I mean, I'm shocked that we don't have that already to some degree. And to say, hey, here's a wireframe, here's a view, here's the first one. We have like this is our initial view controller, or whatever the entry point of the app. Then we wire them to the other side, to the other views, and we have some basic behaviors. You press this button, goes here. Press that button, and we can even do basic. That's it. Actually, you know what? There you go. App idea for all you out there listening. All 20 or whatever.
Xcode plugin idea.
Yeah, make a SwiftUI app, Mac app, that basically is a glorified but simplified Sketch or Figma that will allow designers to lay out their components, visually wire the views from one to the other, press a button, and then once you have like once you've done your preview and it looks good in your mind, you say export. Boom, it exports out an Xcode project with all the SwiftUI components that builds you a basic app. There you go. Great idea. Should be done.
I mean, I don't know about whether the current models could work. I mean, so what's the input from that kind of thing? The input right now has to be something textual. But
well, so here's. Are you talking about like a data? You talking about like a data model or some kind of like?
Well, if you want to use one of these LLM tools, right? That you need to have a text input. Even with the diffusion stuff, the image stuff, there's still a text input which then links to the.
I mean, you could use an LLM model if you want, or you could. I mean, that might be on the
I'm saying that the reason you want to do that is because you want to give it more of a vague description, and then the hope that in the model space it has examples of like code that works, and it can spit it back out again. Essentially, because that's kind of what it's doing. It's just like it's remixing, stuff that it learned.
All you're seeing is like happy paths, right? So like every time you see something on Twitter or whatever, like, hey, I'm now.
Some of you don't seem so happy. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And like I see a sky. It's like you type prompted like, show me a moving sky in Spider-Verse kind of filter, and then put a human walking through on a beach in this backdrop or whatever. And they have like examples like that from a generative art point of view. You can do a combination of a lot of these different models to create the final result. I think we're kind of in like the early stages in my mind of like they're all like there's things that are working separately, but in concert with each other, they can create something interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, I think you're right. Like those ones that use the the image generators inside another app, you still giving it text prompts, right? If I remember correctly, you're telling it like, give me a sky, give me like the sun.
That was one example, yeah.
But I think it's because you have to use text as the input.
Mm-hmm.
So you could still have that in something like Xcode, and you could do.
Sure.
And I think something like Apple, what they could do is they could train their own model because they have the money to do this. Or I mean, they could take a model and like further refine it, like just like everyone else doing. And they could maybe focus on generating Swift UI code, and then in Xcode give you the ability to have it generate a bunch of useful Swift UI code for all kinds of tasks.
Could you imagine, for example, like a next generation storyboard, right? Versus, it sounds terrifying for, let's just say on an iPad, right? And I'm not saying for, and this is not anything in Xcode. This would be just like a playground thing or something that is just isolated to itself, and just be like, hey, look, here's how, and just all it is just to teach you how to like lay out a Swift UI view and then interact. But in the back, it's generating all that code, right? And then once you're done, you do export, and then you generates an Xcode project.
You remember those crazy rumors about the new Apple goggles, where there was like, it'll allow people to build apps for AR or VR apps and then have them published to the store and through Siri or something, right? Well, I mean, technically, if you could, if you had all these LLM stuff working right, I mean, maybe you could do that. I don't know if I don't really believe those particular rumors, but I mean, look,
I think it was actually like Reality Composer.
Yeah,
and they called it an app, quote unquote.
But I mean, if you could be like, if you could ask Dingus, because I don't want to actually trigger your devices.
Sure.
To be like, hey Dingus, I would like, I want a VR app that shows me directions to the closest 7-Elevens in my area or something, and then that enough of a prompt that it generates the actual code for you. Oh. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think you need to really like think about how, if you really want to push these tools, like where could they go? I'm thinking we are already taking snippets of code. We can generate snippets of code as far as I understand. Mm-hmm. But can we generate like fully functional apps from a prompt, at least as a starting point? I think it's theoretically possible, but I'm not sure if it can happen now or it will happen anytime soon, because I think it's much more difficult and potentially and expensive, but why not?
So I guess you're looking at it, it's kind of funny because I think we're both looking at it, the solution in two different ways. I'm kind of looking at it from a designer's point of view. So in the context of like, the designer might lay things out, and maybe they might say, can you maybe ask as an assistant, like this, can you show me different examples of a grocery timer app? Shout out to you, Arpit. And maybe it'll give you like different type of design of wireframes, and maybe you can do like you can drag that into one of them into your view, and then it will auto generate the view after looking at the image, right? Because there'll be an image. You'll look at that image and go, okay, like this is a text field, this is that, this is in this position, and then it will generate the Swift UI code in the background. You can still see it in your viewfinder or your preview.
Yeah, you could do that. Why not? Because you could feed in pixels.
Sure.
To a these networks, and then you can give it the image, and then so I imagine you literally could sketch out your screens
exactly.
Yeah, and then have it work. So yeah, that would work
my job will be obsolete at this point.
Well, not completely obsolete, but I think that
not obsolete, but yeah.
I wonder which is harder to make work, the image-based input approach or text-based prompt approach. But either way, yeah, that's actually really useful. This is what I'm talking about. Like, I'm saying we're not going to be out of a job.
No.
There's so much like boilerplate crap, and there's so many common patterns that you do over and over again across different applications and projects, that if you can automate some of that stuff, you will not only make a more experienced programmer much more productive and be able to focus on more interesting things, but you bring on more junior developers who then they're going to be able to make more reliable code, because they're going to be able to kind of lean on the so-called AI to generate certain kinds of common patterns.
Mhm.
And it could be useful as a learning tool. It can also be useful if you're like a large organization or something. You want to keep the code base.
I mean,
more,
it could
stable.
even give designers an opportunity to sort of create the projects, the starting point of the project, and just be like, and then to take it to their stakeholders or whoever. And
so that's what you
like,
mean by the next generation.
Yeah, just be like because like the
that's always a dream. The designers can design something and then have it.
And then have the code. I mean, it's always going to be the start. It's always the starting point. Like production people will probably look at it and be like, "Oh no!"
Well, it has to be the starting point. It's like there's
if you know that program.
There's so much complexity in a modern app. There's distributed systems involved and APIs and there's all kinds of stuff. But yeah, a starting point. That's great, and a way for designers to and developers to more directly interact.
Sure.
Because then you might be able to go the other way, right? I mean, if the developer makes a change in the code, then it's obviously going to be reflected in the user interface that the code displays.
Sure.
So you can kind of go back and forth that way.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that would be pretty.
And so, but it would be cool. And then I mean, I wonder if you could go back and forth, that would be ideal. But even if you're just starting point, and even if you're just saying like, especially something like SwiftUI.
Yeah.
Because you can create views that are just completely independent of all the business logic and stuff, then I totally think that could be really useful for designers. Like, I need a login screen flow, and with these like 4 screens or whatever for these different types of scenarios, here's what I'm thinking. You sketch it out, and then you give it some parameters, like here's our company colors, here's a type of button I want, like here's a style guide with like, different components, use this, and then it generates this stuff in the style that you wanted, and as a starting point, and then you can give that to the developers. So developers can use that to start wiring up stuff while you perhaps tweak things and make it more specific, and then you can then update the views on your own, or through your build process, build train or whatever.
Sure.
And then so you could basically get this much closer collaboration, like almost automatic, or more automated collaboration too. I imagine it might be possible. So you don't have to collaborate by going to a meeting necessarily. You can collaborate by, having the designer be able to update the UI without breaking anything.
Sure.
Potentially. I'm just thinking out loud here.
I mean, these are, in many ways
pie in the sky ideas, but maybe we'll see. We're giving.
This is a free app idea. I mean, good grief. Anybody
free
can pull this off. Great. Yeah,
I think Adobe is probably working on that right now with Figma, right?
I would hope so. Honestly,
everyone is working on AI, figuring out AI integrations. Everybody. It's something that we all need to understand how it works to some degree, and that includes the other tools that are available that help you build machine learning stuff. Like the Vision framework in Apple, the ML stuff. All those things, and also I think though, since we're like way over time now, we should try to wrap it up. But I think that we also need to also remember to remain skeptical of this stuff, and don't fall into the hype too much, because it's not magic.
It's a fascinating food for thought kind of thing, right? Like, okay, like, all right, fine. If we're going to be dragged into this conversation, like, let's see what is actually here. What meat is here that's worthy of the attention, right? And maybe what would we actually do? What would be actually something that we can take advantage of here? Like what pieces can we do that might be worth integrating back in our workflows? I think we should probably wrap it up, since I think we're in a good space. Unless you have anything to say, Aaron.
No, we'll just see where this stuff goes in the next few years.
Indeed. All right. Well, that's all we have for today. You can learn more about Philly Cocoa at phillycocoa.org. There you'll find links to our Slack group, meetup schedule, and contact info. If you're feeling generous, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever your podcast platform of choice is. And share us with all your developer friends. And one more thing, a couple more jokes.
Oh, these ChatGPT jokes?
Oh, no. I'm staying away from them now, because they're not funny, or at least not funny to me. But here's the first one. Why are assembly programmers always soaking wet? They
don't
work
know.
below the sea level.
Oh my god.
All right, here's one more. Why do Java programmers have to wear glasses?
Why?
Because they don't see sharp.
Oh man. Should have got that one. It's like you see sharp.
Until next time, good luck on your own developer journey. We will cheer for you always. Hey, that's a little weird. Why is it asking me to put, 1,000 tablespoons of salt?